You can probably see behind me some of the rescue efforts that are taking place here in Adana. These are search and rescue crews that are starting what will be another long night shift here for this residential building that has collapsed behind me. It was a 14-storey building housing dozens of people. And it collapsed. In the words of authorities here, they say it collapsed and crashed to the ground. Authorities have told us that they are still hearing voices under this rubble at the moment, and they're using whatever means they can to try to get to those people. You can see the heavy machinery behind us, and the generators have just started up again. On top of this pile of debris, you can probably also see there are people literally picking through with their bare hands, trying to make some sort of a dent in the enormous pile of twisted metal and concrete that stands in front of us now. They're trying to come at this from three different sides. So here in front of us, behind this building and on top as well. And I can smell in the air this really thick smell of smoke because it's bitterly cold here, and so the rescuers have built fires. You can probably see one just near us to try and keep themselves warm. Not only the rescuers, but also families of people who are suspected to still be buried under this rubble. They are standing on the street, which is just about 100 metres behind me. They're huddled together in blankets. They've built fires in little drums, trying to keep warm. And they're awaiting any information about what has happened to their loved ones. But as we've heard, it is just a race against time at this point, and you can see an incredibly difficult situation that these search and rescue operators face.
And Dr. Ian Norton is an emergency response expert and has worked with Turkish authorities on earthquake response plans in the past. He joins us now from the Sunshine Coast. Ian Norton, welcome. So there's this massive rescue and support challenge unfolding right now in Turkey and Syria. You've actually spent time in Turkey helping them prepare for exactly this. Explain for us what you've done there over the years.
So I was working with WHO. I was head of the Emergency Medical Team Initiative, which was an effort after Haiti, really, to make sure that any response teams, particularly medical teams going in, reach minimum standards, know that they're trained, that they bring the right logistics, don't become a burden, and are well coordinated. Now, Turkey happened to be the first place where we ran a huge joint simulation where we had both the rescue teams, the search and rescue teams, and the medical teams working together in a large operation, really to work with local government to make sure that AFAD, the Central Disaster Management Authority, knew how to accept or decline offers of assistance from the international community, because we knew that cities like Istanbul, particularly Ankara as well, but the south, as you see now, were hugely vulnerable to earthquakes.
So what are the particular challenges coordinating the rescue and support response in a disaster of this scale and with significant damage to infrastructure too?
Well, it's a story of two different countries, two different situations here, as your sort of reference just before I came on highlighted. On the northern side in Turkey, we have a well-organized government, a sovereign state with no conflict at the moment, and we certainly have a strong national system. And it's a question now of the national system first and foremost moving forward. UMKE is the main medical response team system. They're a huge capacity, 25 very large teams. They will all have moved into the area quickly. They will have done disaster assessments along with their rescue teams and decide which of the teams that the international community is offering they choose to bring in. And they will be brought in through, I suppose the big challenge there is the airheads, the coordination of the airports, making sure the right teams are prioritized, and making sure we don't get congestion like we saw. We saw a little bit of this in Nepal when I was organizing that kind of coordination at that time. On the southern side in Syria, it's a completely different story. You will have much more reticence on the international side to send teams in. It's much more insecure. We also have the complication of a government who is party to a conflict in its own country, and therefore we need to move to a slightly different coordination system, not just moving through the governmental coordination mechanisms, but having the humanitarian cluster system also activated, whereby NGOs can meet together and decide who's supporting shelter and water and sanitation, food and health and other things. and be able to have that effect as best they can. One more complication, I'm afraid, is that Gaziantep, which you see has been affected, was also a major hub for support into northern Syria.
And how much of a complication is the weather with this too? Not only have we seen snow, but there have been pretty heavy rainstorms as well through the area.
Yeah, it's just the chaos and the difficulty facing local responders. I mean, those are the ones you see most on the TVs right now. It's all going to be about how local effort can be mobilized. So these are family members saving each other, people in villages, and then people who are maybe working construction but have mobilized their own vehicles. That's where the true groundswell of this rescue will be happening, and with the national authorities. And then afterwards, the international teams, when they manage to arrive, will add extra capacity and extra skill. So it's really difficult in this kind of situation. We saw this in Fukushima as well, and the great Japan earthquake in extremely cold conditions. So the difficulty for the responders, but particularly for the survivors, and those who are trapped now under the rubble, really have a clock that's ticking against them.
Yeah, so the search is on now for survivors. For how long after the quake do you expect, or do you think trapped people could be found alive in these conditions?
Yeah, the normal mantra is that no more than a week in good conditions, perhaps with some rain trickling in and other forms of support that could get to a survivor. In these kind of conditions, I would halve that at the most. So you're going to see this much more rarely, these hero rescues, if you like. We need to make sure that we don't get too focused just on that, remembering, as I said, that thousands of people have been rescued already by their loved ones or by local village teams. And they are now clogging up the health system. So we always work on a 1 to 3 ratio. If we have an estimation from a national authority that, say, in Turkey 7,000 have died, then we will instantly plan for at least 3 times that injured, so 21,000. That number is probably going to rise much more. So I've heard estimates up to 20,000 dead. So we should be planning for 60,000 injured. That's a huge logistics challenge.
And what do you make of the response so far from what you can tell here on the other side of the world? And have you been called on for advice in the last 48 hours or input on this?
Yeah, so I certainly see, again, 2 different tales. Huge mobilization. I've been in contact with the European Response Coordination Centre. In fact, I'll be in Brussels early next week, meeting them anyway. That was a pre-planned visit. So if there is extra support, then that can be given at that stage, and also in Geneva. But I know already that the request for assistance came out within, I would say, about 5 hours. That's extremely fast. That's not normally the case. That's great news, really, that Turkey has had these multiple simulation exercises with the international community and quickly asked for assistance. If we see a government wait for several days, then instantly, we've handcuffed ourselves. We're already behind that important curve. In Syria, though, I think that will be extremely challenging. It also is, I suppose, an interesting fact that a lot of the regional agencies have different head offices for Turkey, which is considered still in Europe, even though it bridges Asia, Europe, and Syria, which is mostly run out of Jordan and other major capitals like Cairo. So you will have 2 different regional offices for most of the agencies on the ground now, trying to coordinate 2 different countries.
Okay, yeah, so huge challenges ahead. Ian Norton, thanks so much for talking to us today from the Sunshine Coast.